This is The Heart of the Matter, and I'm your host, Zach. We're back to talk about our most recent podcast episode, which was with my wife, Sarah. And she had gone over her story and her struggles, and what it amounted to was she still had some issues in her faith and some things that she was still struggling with. And it ultimately came down to control. She wasn't able to, or she's having difficulty trying to find a way to surrender that control, to leave it, to give it up out of her hands. And that's something that really stuck with me, was that it seems so difficult for something that looks like it would be not as difficult for me. It looks like it'd be more difficult for her in certain situations. Now, when I try to correlate to something in my life, I can see quite heavily that this podcast, I had a certain way of how I wanted to do it, and I was so fixated on that being the way. But it wasn't. It wasn't that. And I had to surrender my thoughts and my ideas on how I thought it should go and how I thought it should be structured, and realize that my way is not the best way. And if God's going to take this and grow this, then I have to learn to surrender and learn to be in that and know that it's not going to be me doing it. And that's been really difficult for me as far as control goes. And that's how I was able to relate a lot to Sarah and her and what she's going through. The first couple takes that we had of our podcast, it didn't really go that way. I was more focused on trying to help her and, telling her that, okay, this is what you're doing and this might help you and maybe you should just let go of this but it's easier said than done. Like, she's even done the same thing with me at times with the podcast when I think it should be a certain way. And I'd love how great of an example that she's given me as far as I give an idea of why, like I explain why I'm doing something in this podcast. Like, let's say the notes. I'm taking notes in the podcast and I'm going through them in order to get, run on a topic that a guest brings up. But it's not like that. And for the example, Sarah had brought up that, it feels too much like an interview. When I was going through the list of questions I had for her, she said it feels too much like an interview, and it just needs to be, needs to flow. It just needs to be a conversation. And at first, I was like taken back by it. I was on the defensive side at first because I had a certain way that I wanted to do it, and I thought that way was best. Again, I'm relying on my own understanding and my own will. I wanted to make my own will for it because this is how it's gonna be. This is how it's gonna be the best it can be. But really, it's not it. I have to learn to submit that, and I have, and it's a continuous struggle because I'm still going through the motions with this and still trying to figure out, what's the best way of wording things? What's the best things? How can I word things to get my point across? And I can't be worried about looking stupid because it's a learning process. It'll come as it does. And I just have to learn to submit to that, to surrender to that, and give that to God ultimately, instead of trying to rely on my own self to make it happen. Going into this episode, I'm going through, I have ideas, right? I have ideas of what I'm going to say, what I'm going to go over, and it's ultimately I have to just get into it. Just get into it and let God speak through me. That's ultimately what it comes down to. And it's something that I took from the last episode that was really, it was helpful for me, and just realizing, it can't be me. I can't rely on myself to do those things. And when it comes to, Sarah's struggle of wanting control and not knowing how to release that, and her realizing that the more she doesn't release, the more God's going to put on her plate until she does realize it, because she humbled herself and wanted a closer relationship with God. And if she asks for a close relationship with God, He's going to give it to her. If she truly wants that, He's going to give it to her. It may not be in the way that she wants, that as she quoted in the last episode, or as she said in the last episode, but she'll get it. And she is getting it right now, as far as so much being put on her plate. And I think once we are able to humble ourselves and surrender what we have a tight grip on, I believe that's when we start to notice the ease off of it. And I can speak about that to the last couple of episodes that I filmed with guests on the podcast, with Sarah's, and the last one with Sarah and Joe LePage's podcast, which you will see after this episode. With those two episodes, it felt like it flowed very easily, and I hardly had to do any work, and I left my notebook to the side. I didn't even check my notes. I looked over them the day before just to get a refresher on the topics, but other than that, just left it all up to the Lord to guide me and direct me, and just got our conversation and allow me to bounce things off of them. And yeah, it's wild to see how things transpire. And even when I don't feel like, even when I don't feel like, or when I don't see the Lord working, He is, and it's a beautiful thing. And I'm excited about the future episodes that we have. But just to tie back into the last episode, as far as what Sarah was touching on, and her difficulty in giving up that control and her uncertainty on how to do that, it prompted me to kind of dive further into the Word and pull some scripture out. And I do have that written down in my notes, but I just wanted to make sure I didn't misquote him. So the first one that I would love to bring up is actually in Proverbs. It's Proverbs 3, 5 through 6. I'm going to read it. I'll have you read along with me on the screen there. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all ways submit to Him, and He will make your path straight." To me, when I read that, I think, trust in the Lord with all your heart. I feel like if my heart is in something else, if I'm looking into something else for love or desire, then it's not with the Lord. So if my love goes into this podcast, if my love goes into reaching more people, I'm so focused on that, I start looking up YouTube videos on how to do that, how to reach more people. And I get sucked into that, and it's less of, okay, let's dive into my Word. Let's get right with the Lord. Let's center my mind on the Lord first, and then He will show me what I need to do to spread the good news. And I believe He's doing that. I believe He's doing that really well. I love it. Okay, let's. I've got another verse here in Philippians 4. These verses are a little sporadic. I kind of quoted it a little bit differently, but it's Philippians 4, verses 4 through 7. And I've got wrote down, "Rejoice in the Lord always." And then verse 5, "Let your gentleness be evident to all." And 6 through 7, Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Yeah, I mean, rejoice in the Lord always. Always rejoice in the Lord. So many times I find it so difficult to, maybe not difficult, but I feel like I get sucked into worldly rejoicing as far as, celebrating things that don't necessarily matter. And instead of giving thanks to God for those things, I tend to boast myself a little too much. And I've noticed how dangerous that can be. Let your gentleness be evident to all. If people around you, or if they can't, to me, I mean, if people around you can't see the gentleness and love that you show them, how can you be a reflection of Christ if that's not the case? That's how I read that. And do not be anxious about anything. In every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Do not be anxious. To submit, surrender in every situation by prayer and petition. Wow. Petition would be, I looked it up earlier, I can't remember what it is, but I'm sure I'll have it on the screen there. The prayer and petition, just be in prayer. And I think it was like a changing, some sort of change, official change, putting in a petition, an official change. So being in prayer and being willing to change whatever it is that we're being anxious about, that fear, that anxiety, that whatever feeling that we're in at that time, being willing to surrender that and give that up. I feel like that's kind of what this verse is saying. And I read a little bit before this in Philippians, and I have a Bible. It's the Telos Bible, and it goes over in the very beginning of the book, or the beginning of that book. So the beginning of Philippians, it kind of gives a summary of what it was about, and it goes over that Paul was writing this letter to Philippi, the church in Philippi. And he's actually, I believe he's in jail in Rome, I believe. And he's writing this letter to the Philippians and just thanking them for sending this messenger to him, because it's this messenger that's taking these letters back to the church in Philippi. And he's thanking them and just giving them guidance and just instilling them a joy and a peace. Just reminding them of what they're searching for, what they're going for in Christ. Just being thankful. Being thankful when we present the request to God, when we ask God to take this anxiousness away, to take this desire that we have that may not be what the Lord wants for us. Just taking that, humbling ourselves, and being thankful for what the outcome is, and being thankful for what God's will is for us. That is what should be more in line with what our sight should be with our sight. That's going to be a lot in this in this whole podcast. It would be just little jokes here and there about sight. I'm sure comments are going to be full of them at some point. I'm sure they will. Yeah, those are a couple of the verses that I had. I've got one more. It's in Luke. And it goes over, Jesus talks to the disciples about whoever wants to be a disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross daily, and follow me. Whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will save it. That verse right there really resonated with me as far as looking up these difficult things about surrendering. Surrendering anything in life, whether that be control, whether that be a longing to be the best at something that isn't really what should be in our line of sight. Oh boy, okay. But that verse there, that just giving up, taking up your cross daily, giving up your life daily for Christ and what He wants for us. We're told to do that on the daily. And so many times it's like life is just such a struggle. You know what I mean? But it's after I'm able to sit down with the Lord and submit every day, I just feel a peace afterwards, a peace and a joy. And it's so easy to allow the world to grab a hold of that and show you, well, there's actually these desires that you can have in your personal life as far as, for me, it's YouTube, There's the YouTube videos that come up that, you deserve a little bit of break today, and so let's just watch this YouTube video that has nothing to do with anything that really helps or is going to help you. It's more of just like wasting time. You're wasting time and I'm not valuing what's in the Bible. I'm not valuing that more than that release of just wanting to do what I want to do. I fall into that a lot. And I pray that the Lord gives me a consistent desire to just be in the Word. Instead of watching those mindless videos, instead of going down the endless rabbit holes that I tend to get down on, I want to center my view in my life. I want to center my life on Him and Him alone. And to be a disciple, I believe that's what it takes. That's what He says here. That's what Jesus says to the disciples right here. If we want to be a disciple, if we truly want to spread the good news, if that's what we want, then we must take up our cross every single day and follow Him. And if we want to save our life, if we prioritize our own lives over Him, we're going to lose it. That's what He says right here. We're going to lose it. And if we want to lose our life, but we don't care about losing our lives for the Lord, He's going to save us. He's going to save us, take us to paradise, and live with Him forever. That's going to be a wonderful place. It's got to be a wonderful place. Don't know what it looks like. Probably drive myself crazy going down in those rabbit holes trying to figure out what it looks like. But I'm sure to be paradise. What do we take from that? How can we learn to surrender? How can we learn to surrender? I feel like it's just a consistent giving up of the things that we feel like we need to have control over. We need to have a tight grip on something, and we're not open to other opinions. And that, something just came to my head. If I couldn't let go of my grip on what I thought was right, and the Lord was using my wife to speak through her to me of, okay, this isn't working. We've filmed the same thing 3 times, 3 times, and it's not working. It feels way too much like an interview. It needs to feel like just a conversation. And it took me to humble my desire of loosen my grip of what I wanted this podcast. I wanted this podcast to go, and the structure that I wanted it to go in, and how I was going to relay things. And instead, I had to let that go, and just had to let go and let God. It's difficult to do that in the moment. But once I was able to humble myself and humble my thoughts of, okay, maybe this isn't the best way. Maybe there is a better way. And once I did that, it's like everything just went exactly how it was supposed to. It went so much better than the last 2 before that. And I think that's how we learn to surrender. It's just being consistent in that. Being consistent in the giving up of the things that we have a tight grip on. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that too. Put them in the comments. Give me an idea on what your thoughts are. Maybe a question that comes up for you. It's difficult. I'm noticing there's a lot more answers in the Bible than I've given it credit before. And it's wild. The difficult things that we are going in life. I'll use the internet or ChatGPT or whatever to find, what verses in the Bible point to this issue. That's what I did for this episode, for surrendering, for releasing control, and it gave me a few verses. Now, I did my research. Obviously, I dove into the word myself and read, the context of those verses and the places they were in, and just the verses before that. Really, the chapter. I like to read the full chapter, either up to that verse or that full chapter, just to get an idea on where, let's say, Jesus and their disciples were, or where Paul was at that time, or just learning the context of it, because there's so many details that you wouldn't really know about unless you read it and found out about them. Like Paul writing that letter while he was in prison in Rome, and you wouldn't reading the verses in Philippians. I mean, you wouldn't really guess that a whole lot if you just took one verse out, right? You just took one verse out and took that as that is the one verse. You wouldn't realize that this guy was in prison. This guy was locked up, and probably on his deathbed. He was locked up in Rome. Yeah, I don't know the whole theology or backstory of it, but I'm pretty sure when he was locked up in Rome, that once he was in prison there, that was towards the end of his life. I know when he wrote the letter to Timothy, that's when he was close to his death. But yeah, if we can learn to just submit and continuing in that and humbling ourselves to know that we don't know better than God knows, and to listen to people who we may think aren't where we are in life, let's say, and that person, let's say that they're not, you don't think they're as smart as you don't think they're as in their faith, their faith isn't as strong as yours, so you can't really take what they're saying is confidently true. And that's where we can find a lot of ourselves relying on our own understanding and falling into that destructive state of not submitting to God, not submitting to His will, not picking up our cross and following Him. Instead, we're planning down our cross, thinking we're better than another person because we think Christ can't use them because they're at this level in life. That's not it. That's not it. I did that with my wife. I want to apologize to Sarah that I'm sorry. This accident happened to me, and my faith grew to so much more than I can even imagine. And I thought that my faith was greater than hers, so why should I listen to her opinion? And I need to learn to humble myself more and to realize it's not the level of what that person's at in life as far as faith and as far as knowledge. It's how God can use them. Realizing that God can use anybody and everybody, and He will. He definitely will. He's humbled me in so many ways through my wife, and I'm so grateful. It's just going to take a continuous of humbling myself, surrendering to Him and to what He has for me, and allowing other people to work, allowing Him to work through other people to get to me. All right. That's going to be it. Thank you guys for watching. I'll talk to you later.